Now, John and Josephine, and then Josephine after John's death, bred many important racehorses here at Ashland on Tate's Creek. And some of them had absolutely wonderful names. Some of their most important horses were horses named Squeeze 'em and Saucebox, and really incredible horse names. And Squeeze 'em and Saucebox were two female horses. They were mares. And John and Josephine carried on a tradition that Henry Clay had had as well, of really focusing a breeding program on brood mares instead of just focusing on studs, on male horses. At the time that John Clay died, Josephine inherited 12 brood mares from his estate, and those 12 brood mares eventually blossomed into an Ashland stud that had, at one point, almost 50 brood mares here on the property. And those brood mares formed the foundation of the important breeding program that Josephine was running here at Ashland. Now, Josephine was also a writer, and during this period of her marriage with John, she published several novels after John's death. And her first novel she published in 1872, and she published that under a pseudonym. The pseudonym was Ojos Morenos, which means dark eyes. And during this period, it's really fun to read John and Josephine's correspondence to one another because John frequently addresses her in Spanish in his letters. There's a letter from May 28th, 1872, where he calls her Quiritita esposa mi carissima, and he signs it Juan instead of John, which is very sweet. It's a nice little look into their marriage, the quality of their marriage, and the kinds of pet names that they would call each other. Now, John was away from Josephine so often because he was running the racing side of their business at Ashland on Tate's Creek for many years. And in the 1870s especially, he was really run down by his traveling, and Josephine was getting very frustrated by all of the work that she was taking on here at back in Lexington, not only of running the stud farm, but also of planting crops, of managing the field hands, of doing and then keeping house and taking care of her family. And there are a couple letters where they get a little bit snippy with one another. The tensions run high. And John writes in a letter from June 12th, 1872, he writes, "I am just as tired of being away from you and home as you are for me. But what does it signify where we are? So we try to do our level best each day. We are permitted to live, provided we believe we are where we ought to be." We don't have Josephine's response preserved, but we know that Josephine responded not very well to the idea that they were both where they ought to be, which was about 800 miles away from one another. John writes again to Josephine in a response to her letter back to him on June 19th, and it's one of the most remarkable letters in their collection of correspondence. So on June 19th, 1872, John responds back to Josephine's letter, and he writes, "Your unkind letter of the 15th instant was received and surprises me. I think you hardly do me justice when you quote the lines, 'It does not signify where we are, so we do our level best,' without quoting the lines concluding the sentence, which, if you take the trouble to refer to it, you will find be, 'So we are where we ought to be,' and which, firmly interpreted, mean I am sleeping and eating in a stable 900 miles from my own dear wife, living so rough that I am sorely tired to preserve in it, and certainly not altogether for myself, for what I have. Are you now a partner in it? And how would you like the three studs running in and out of their lots at home, fighting and killing one another? I mean business. You are the only wife I ever expect to have. I love you as I do myself, and would shed my blood for you if necessary. And I am sure to be satisfied with whatever you do or have done in my absence, because I have confidence in you." And an absolutely incredible letter from a husband to a wife in an era when husband and wives did not have this kind of partnership, especially in business. John also was expressing frustration in this quality of life that he was living at these racetracks. And it probably prompted Josephine to continue encouraging him to just come home and focus on the breeding farm. And she's responding to letters like this, where she says, on June 24th, 1872, John writes to her, "I am strongly tempted to sell every damn one of the horses at auction this week and come home, but I am sure to do wrong anyway, whether I go or stay." So he's pretty frustrated. Now, after John's death, I mentioned that Josephine had been a writer as well as this incredible horsewoman. And Josephine's writings were something that had gained her national attention, not only through her published works, but also through essays and lectures that she would provide to newspapers and occasionally give to women's clubs and to other sorts of organizations. And in 1909, Josephine is invited to offer a lecture to a women's convention actually up in Canada. And even though she can't attend, she sends a remarkable paper to this convention to be read in her stead that's called Women in the Professions. And this essay is so revealing, not only to her as a trailblazer, as a horsewoman, but also her as a trailblazer in general for women in this era. And in Women in the Professions, she writes, "But the phase I know best is the production of thoroughbred horses, which is preeminently not a feminine occupation, and some details of its operations may afford interest as proof that all pursuits are open to woman and that her only limitations lie within herself. I well know that in the continuance in part of the business in which my husband long had been engaged, a hard task lay before me, and to be successful seemed almost beyond the pale of possibility. Men of experience had wrecked fortunes and failed conspicuously, but feeling pledged to the difficult undertaking, I resolved to do my best and to rely absolutely on myself, to paddle my own canoe, and, if the craft went down, to sink with her." Just a remarkable historical document of a woman who was making it work in a male-dominated industry and a male-dominated world.